word I could put to what I wanted to talk about today, one word came to me in particular, and that is the word shift. And then when I said that word, it made me think of another one of my favorite words, that if you just take one of the letters out of this word, you have another word that I love to say. And I like how when we're going to put kind of like a cuss word on something, we feel like if we put an asterisk, that helps it a little, like makes it more palatable, like people don't really know what it is. So just for fun, let's imagine that shift were a bad word. And I want you to think about some alternate titles to my talk today. Let's go through those. Get your shift together. Don't shift where you eat. Are you shifting me? When shift hits the fan, shifts and giggles, a shift storm, shift the bed, or shift bricks. And thank you for attending my dad jokes. What I really want to talk about today is what to do when life is full of shift, which can also feel like an opportunity to cuss, right? So I'll tell you about a season recently that I felt this type of shift coming. It was the end of 2018. I had a long fall, lots of events, right? And I got to the end of the year and I just was starting to feel that silence and stillness, that reflection over the year. And I realized something is not right. Like something's not satisfying. Something's awry. So I decided the best thing for me to do is to find some sort of retreat space to go to, because really what was happening is here I was, a Black woman, a performing artist. I'd been performing in the same industry for over 15 years. That industry was predominantly white. It was faith-based and Christian, and also very conservative, not only theologically, but also politically. And I think at the end of 2018, it was starting to really hit home to me that it was hard for me to be in that space. I didn't know that what I was feeling is that a shift was coming. So I go to this Black woman retreat because I'm thinking the best place for me to be is to be in a space that is built by Black women and for Black women, right? So I do something that I very rarely do for myself, which I was like, you know what? I'm paying for this plane ticket. I'm registering for this thing. I am going there. I don't know anyone. I just went. I just wanted to soak in any of the information I could get. I get there, and a part of the breakout sessions is a healing circle. And I felt a little weirded out because I'm like, what is y'all going to be doing to me in a healing circle? But I felt like, you know what? I should go to the healing circle. And in the healing circle, each woman could speak back her truth, could say where she was stuck, where she was struggling. And the Black women facilitating would speak back to you, tell you their reflections after you shared your story. And I started to talk and say out loud these things that I had never said in public, right? I was telling them how the work I'd been doing was making me feel bad. It was making me feel bad in my body, my health. It was making me feel like I didn't have confidence anymore in the gifts that I had, in my talents, in my skills. My confidence had been slowly eroding over the years, right? And I just didn't know what to do about any of it. And this woman looked back at me in my eyes and she said, Amena, the spaces where you've been working are traumatizing you. And every time you re-enter that space, it is re-traumatizing you. So at that moment, it's like she's saying some words out loud to me that I think I was feeling like in my soul, but I just didn't have the right words to articulate it, right? And as she said it, it was like I left the retreat and I was like, boom, this is it. I got to do it. I got to make some changes. Went home and promptly went into anxiety. And let me explain to you why. I went home and I'm feeling the gap between where I've been and where I think I'm supposed to be headed, but I don't even know what's on the other side of this. I don't even know that there is a place for me there. I've been doing the same thing in the same industry for over 15 years. Where am I supposed to go and start over now? I was knocking on 40 at the time. And look, I thought that 40 was going to be this time where, like, you know, when you're on a flight, you know, when we could travel and you're on a flight and they tell you finally get to your 10,000 feet. You know, you're finally at the place where you can take off your seatbelt and freely roam about the cabin. That's what I thought my 40s were going to be. And here I am, the beginning of 2019, feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to start over. I'm going to have to totally rethink my work, the flow of that, my life, everything, right? So I just start reaching for all of the professionals. I'm like, oh, yes, I'll have a therapist. Let me also get some fries with that. I would also like to get 2 career coaches and a milkshake. And let me get a spiritual director while I'm at it, right? And I started talking to my spiritual director, and she said 3 words to me. She said, you're in a time of transition, and there's 3 things that you have to do when you're in a time of transition. She said, 1, you have to grieve. You have to grieve the thing that you have to leave. You have to grieve the life that maybe you used to know, or the place that was that comfort for you. She was like, then you have to celebrate. Celebrate the lessons you learned there. Celebrate who it made you, right? Celebrate the woman you are. And she said, when you do those first 2 things, you will find yourself experiencing this openness to the future, this openness to what can be. Now, of course, I hope she was going to say some more positive things to me than this, because I'm like, I don't want grief to be the first thing you say I should do in a transition, but it's true. And I started working through those feelings, those emotions, right? The grieving, the celebrating, the openness. Then, March of 2019, I get an email in my inbox, because one of the things that I felt strongly I was supposed to do was add back a contact form on my email. I'm in the middle of this shift. I don't know where I'm going to go, but I'm like, right now, there's just a little page that says, like, here are the people you can contact if you need to reach Amena. And I was like, I need to put a contact form back on there. And I don't know why I felt that way, but here we are. I get this email, and it says, hey, Amena, we're a New York creative agency. We're representing a Black woman celebrity client. We're looking for a poetic voiceover statement for our client to say. We want to know if you want to write it. And I was immediately like, this is a scam. I was like, is this actually a legitimate thing? I mean, celebrity is one of those words that, you know, I could wake up one day and just decide I'm a celebrity, right? So I'm like, I don't really know who's on the other side of this email. I don't know if this is some sort of like pyramid scheme. I just don't know. So I forwarded it to my now manager, but then she wasn't my manager. I forwarded it to her and I said, can you be my manager for 20 minutes and find out, is this legitimate? She writes back to me and says, not only is this legitimate, you need to sign a non-disclosure agreement because the Black woman celebrity behind this project wants to speak to you. So I'm like, I can't imagine who this person is, why I need to sign an NDA, and what in the world they want to talk to me about, right? So sign all the papers, do all the things. And my now manager calls me back and she says, do you want to know who it is? And I'm like, of course I want to know. She's like, okay, guess. I'm like, it's Beyonce. She's like, it's not. I'm like, it's Oprah. She's like, no. And I'm like, it's Michelle Obama. She's like, it's not. And I'm like, well, I have to start out naming like the Black woman triumvirate first. You know, like I got to start there and at least like see what's going to be. She's like, it's not any of those people. It's Tracee Ellis Ross. Now, I was with my mom and grandma at the time I received this information, and I may or may not have run around and also said the word that is like shift, but isn't, as if my mom and grandma couldn't hear. I may or may not have done that. So next thing I know, I'm on a phone call with Tracee Ellis Ross and her team, hearing from her about her beauty brand, her natural hair care brand Pattern. Her vision for how we are in the middle of a revolution and how people of color are at the center of leading that revolution, how she wants to create this product that's not only a product, but a celebration of Black heritage and Black legacy and Black culture. And she says to me, I want you to help me write this. She's like, if I tell you what I was thinking I wanted it to say, can you help make it sound beautiful? So somehow customer service Amena was like, yeah, Tracee, sure. Yes. Sure, I can do that by that date. Yes. And then she says, Amena, I should have said this first, but I want to tell you that I think your work is wonderful. She said, your work is truthful, it's soulful, it's full of joy, and it's full of lightness. And that is why I want to work with you on this project. And I hung up the phone, right? And of course, as the weeks go by, I end up in New York City, meeting with Tracee in person, reading to her out loud this thing I've written, working with her, collaborating with her until we come up with what becomes the Pattern Beauty Manifesto. But I thought back on those words she said to me, and I realized even if the whole thing hadn't worked out, even if they'd gone a different direction, it was somebody else they picked instead of me, I needed to hear her say those words back to me because that's what I hoped my work was doing. But I'd been in a space so long that I had been just not thinking that I was really good enough to do something else, or good enough to do more than was expected of me. Maybe the expectation of me was 16% of what I could bring to the table, or 24% of what I could bring to the table. But it was not asking me to bring 100% of my full self to anything. And there I was, getting this opportunity to make a shift with Tracee Ellis Ross. So here I am in this picture with Tracee Ellis Ross that every time I look at it, I'm like, is you crazy? Oh my gosh. Getting to see words that I've written all over the marketing materials for Pattern, getting a chance to do something that I love, which is working with all these diverse people, and we're all working on the same common cause. We want people to be celebrated. We want people of color and women of color and Black women to be celebrated, right? So what is the shift trying to teach us? I want to tell you a couple of things that I think are important for us to remember. Number one is the shift always announces itself ahead of time. If you are currently experiencing a shift, or you're feeling this sense of unrest or this sense of irritation, that's the shift telling you, I'm on the way. And sometimes it's not that the shift's not telling us ahead of time, it's that we don't allow ourselves enough time in silence, enough time in stillness, enough time to take all the voices around us and get them quiet so we can really hear what is happening inside ourselves, inside our bodies, inside our souls, right? And we're actually experiencing layers of a shift because many of us are experiencing that shift in our work, in our personal lives, in our family lives, but we're also globally and here in America as a nation experiencing a shift as well. But the shift told us it was coming. It was announcing itself ahead of time. So pay attention to those moments where you are feeling like, I don't know if I fit anymore. I don't know if I'm feeling as satisfied in my work anymore. That is the shift telling you it's coming. The other thing, which I really hate, but it's true, the shift will arrive with uncertainty. I would love for the shift to arrive with like a 33-point plan. I'm really a person who loves a 33-point plan, you know? I love for someone to arrive and tell me everything's going to change, and here's a manual as to how that change will unfold for you. I would love that. But the shift never arrives like that. The shift arrives with a bunch more of uncertainty. The shift arrives with a bunch more questions. The shift arrives and you got to sit in the uncertainty. For those of us who are planner brains, that's going to be really hard, okay? You're going to want to figure out how you can make a plan and come up with a strategy. But before you can get a strategy, before you can know what's next, you have to sit in the fact that you don't know, that you're in that in-between space. You're in that gap between where you were and where you hope to be. Or you may be between where you were and you don't even know what this is over here. The shift will arrive with uncertainty. I also want to share, I loved this documentary about Toni Morrison. It's called The Pieces I Am. I definitely encourage you to check this out. Toni Morrison is one of my favorite authors. I actually wanted to be an author because I read Toni Morrison's books as a child. And in this documentary, you're hearing a lot from Toni Morrison, but you're also hearing from other amazing people that are close to her. And poet Sonia Sanchez, who was one of my inspirations, was talking about Toni Morrison's work. And she talked about how Toni Morrison's work was inviting Black people to reimagine themselves and also to reimagine America. And Sonia Sanchez said this phrase. She said, reinvent means you don't like yourself. Instead, reimagine. The shift can help you reimagine. Maybe it's not reinventing we need to do now. Maybe it's the fact that we need to reimagine. And what I love about this season of time that we're in history, even though it is very hard and it's very difficult for all of us on many levels, what we are watching is we are watching activists and community organizers lead us into what it can look like to reimagine. Reimagine America. Reimagine our institutions. Reimagine education. Reimagine not only just thinking of new and fun ideas, but how the ideas we create can be more equitable. How we can look at the center and make sure that the most marginalized voices among us, the most vulnerable people among us, that their voices are at the center actually, that they are the ones leading us. That's where a lot of our reimaginings got to start. And maybe you have to reimagine yourself. Maybe you have a certain view of yourself. Maybe other people have certain expectations of you. but maybe now the shift is time to reimagine that. The shift will lead you to discover a new normal. And unfortunately, you may not ever be able to go back to the old normal. We're in the middle of a global pandemic. There are things that may never go back to what we knew before there was a pandemic. And yeah, there's a lot of grief to that. There's a lot of things we miss. But what if we have an opportunity to think about a new normal? What's that look like? How can we push ourselves to rethink, reimagine? You know what I love about the word imagine is it just makes me immediately think of myself as a kid, because I was so good at imagining when I was a child. I could just sit and make up stories and put my stuffed animals in a movie scene and pretend I was the movie director. I had so many ideas, and there was nothing in my kid brain to tell me those ideas couldn't work. And we're in a season of time, whether it's personally, professionally, or historically, that it's time for us to imagine and discover a new normal. What does that look like? How do we change our work? How do we stop grasping onto the old way and think about what is the equitable new way? So today, yes, I became a poetic partner to the brand Beauty, Pattern Beauty. Got a chance to be a part of so many wonderful projects with them and still get a chance to work with them some. And my whole trajectory of career took this great shift, this big turn away from what I'd been doing all of these years, but also I get to take the lessons with me that I learned from my life before I had this shift. And the thing is, the shift's always going to come. We're never going to get to a point in life where we're not going to shift anymore. So maybe we'll serve ourselves better by thinking about how can we accept the shift, embrace the shift. And I don't know, maybe you're in the middle of a shift storm. Maybe you're in the middle of shifting bricks, okay? Or shifting the bed, I don't know. But wherever you are, curse words included, what's the new normal? And how can we do it in a way that is centering those among us whose voices we need to hear even more? Thanks.